Watch this.
Canyon County is between a rock and a hard place when it comes to whether to allow a rock quarry just a stone's throw from the symbol of America. Speaking of symbols, could the famous Idaho tuber lose its top billing as America's favorite vegetable because some scientists don't consider it a vegetable? Psh, not if the potato state's reps have anything to say about it, and they've had plenty to say about it. Almost as iconic as the potato, at least in Boise, is the Depot. No longer used as a travel hub, it's still the photogenic destination for almost anyone to see the city. We're digging into the archives to do a deep dive into the Depot to celebrate its big day. An Emmett-based developer is planning to make a big change to a chunk of land along Boise River Road. Outside Parma and near Notice in Canyon County, they're planning to convert hundreds of acres of farmland into a quarry. The developers want to turn what's underground into gravel, but the county now isn't so sure about it. Planning and Zoning tabled the project after hearing the public oppose it. The county has yet to set a date for when they will revisit the proposed project, but those who want to preserve the land, well, they visit that land all the time. Here's Andrew Bartline.
Boise River Road's best known for its namesake. Up over the riverbank, it's next known for the land use.
This entire cornfield area.
But to Louisa,
oh, that's probably
the land's
I'm real bad at distances.
best shared.
Okay. There's definitely an eagle on the nest. I see 2 eaglets, and at the moment she's feeding them. They've been nesting out there successfully for several years.
At least long as Louisa's been in town.
Moved to Idaho about 5 years ago.
Because the area checked off as many boxes.
One of which was good places to bird.
And who would have thought?
This is one of them.
At least for now.
Well, it would be technically called a quarry if it goes through.
Canyon County planning and zoning records show a local developer wants to convert this farmland into a nearly 260-acre mineral extraction site, mostly for gravel, leaving the wildlife in question.
So it depends on, can they find a territory that's suitable for them that isn't already claimed by another eagle pair?
And it's slim pickings.
And eagles are here year-round.
Eagles are federally protected.
So it limits what people can do in and around the nest during their nesting period.
Meaning these birds?
Oh, one of the babies just reared up.
Have a safety net.
It can't stop it entirely, no.
Or rather, just the babies.
It can protect them for this year. They may require that they would try to take certain mitigation measures so that the eagles would continue to use the nest. But there's absolutely no guarantee with the type of activity that goes on when you've got an active rock pit.
The developer's application says the project won't disrupt the landscape or other properties because this land, it already borders other gravel pits.
We just drove by one coming in here.
Louisa's not alone.
Maybe not necessarily for the birds or the wildlife.
Parma Valley Winery and Bistro overlooks the acreage and the eagle's nest. They offered written testimony to planning and zoning to oppose the gravel project because it would hurt their business.
Crack repair.
And evidently,
that one's serious. There's
Louisa's windshield.
Kind of the nature of a sand and gravel pit.
She got the crack today. But her main focus?
Oh, it's a goose.
It's still fixed. Protecting the lands, preserving the wildlife, a prescriptive eye over both.
I hope it gets denied.
Last we heard from Canyon County, they tell us that planning and zoning is now asking for additional information from the developers. What that additional information is unclear at this point. We asked the county for more clarity. What do you want to know that you don't already know from those developers? We're still waiting to hear back from them, Brian, but they did tell us they will get us that information. So hopefully by the time we get this on our website, we'll have that answer ironed out. But they want to hear more from the developers now.
I guess I would like to know how they can say it wouldn't be disruptive of the current landscape. I mean, quarries dig massive holes in the ground. They're run by tractors, which are loud. There's exhaust, and if you're that close to an eagle's nest, that could be very disruptive.
There was a piece in there I read about keeping the dust down with water, mitigating that. I mean, they have answers to these things in the applications, and I think the way it was worded in that application was it wouldn't harm nearby properties, the winery, for example, because they'd say, there's a quarry over there. Who cares if there's one right here?
Okay.
Essentially, that's their argument.
All right, we'll see if Canyon County takes this one back up. Thank you, Andrew. Well, it is consistently the most popular vegetable in the United States year over year. And every year, every one of us, well, I guess we eat nearly 50 pounds of them in an entire year. Some of us carrying the weight for others, like in a burlap sack when it comes to this, but they can be served so many ways, but most people like to just eat them fried. We're talking about the potato, obviously. It's the most popular vegetable in America, but is it actually a vegetable? It's a tough question to ask in a place known for its famous potatoes, but that's the question being asked by the USDA right now. The Department of Ag's Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee wants to make the tuber a grain, not on Congressman Mike Simpson's watch, and several others as well. Congressman Simpson, not only part of the Congressional Potato Caucus, he is the co-chair of that caucus. He said on social media last week he's committed to protecting potatoes and their place on your plate. Part of his potato problem, though, he's got 99, but his starch ain't one, apparently. The committee's attempt to kick the spud out of the verified vegetable group into the grain group, which is why, as the Idaho Ag advocate, Congressman Simpson put his name atop a letter to the USDA and U.S. Health and Human Services to say, really? This again? Letter says in part, unlike grains, white potatoes are strong contributors of potassium, calcium, vitamin C, vitamin B6, and fiber, end quote. Plus, the 2013 National Library of Medicine their study said potatoes should be included in the vegetable group because, well, they contribute critical nutrients. 28 other members of Congress signed this letter. Yes, let's go with the 11-year-old data, by the way, 2013 study. The committee does this every 5 years. They submit the latest research and they issue new recommendations to help create the dietary guidelines for Americans. The next one they have to issue is coming up on 2025. So why a grain would you want to put the potato in that category? Because according to the USDA, there are only 5 food groups: dairy, fruit, protein, grain, and veggie. And since the other countries around the world, including the World Health Organization, put potatoes in the starchy carb category with bread and pasta, I guess the question is, why can't we? But the potato lobby is strong, and they have thwarted efforts to downplay the benefits of the loaded baked potato every single time. A potato identifying as a grain? Not in Idaho. A family of 4 died Saturday after their car was hit by a train, and today we learned their names and the impact they had on their local community. Morgan Romero shares that and more in today's 411.
In day 4 of Chad Daybell's trial today, aliases, evil spirits, and affairs were the focus. Daybell is accused of murdering and conspiring to murder his first wife, Tammy Daybell, and 2 of his current wife, Lori Vallow Daybell's children, JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan. Chandler, Arizona police officer Nathan Duncan testified today about his role overseeing the investigation into Charles Vallow's death. He's Lori's 4th husband who was killed in 2019. Duncan reviewed text messages and emails from Charles to Chad, Tammy, and Lori. And one of the most powerful messages, Charles calls Lori out for her affair with Chad and says lying has become second nature to her.
There really is something wrong with you. I really don't want to do what I have to do, but you have to be exposed for what you really are.
There were also messages about light and dark, death percentages, and Charles' insurance money not being left to Lori after he was killed. For more coverage on the trial, head to our website, ktvb.com. We now know the names of the family of 4 from Nampa killed after their truck was hit by a train Saturday. The Canyon County coroner identified them as 38-year-old Benjamin Maupin, 35-year-old Capri Maupin, and their 2 children, 17-year-old Caden and 11-year-old Ryder. The family owned the Mint Barrel Barn Event Center, a popular wedding venue in Canyon County. Idaho State Police says the family was traveling in a Chevy Silverado on a private road that intersects with a railroad crossing near Notice. Investigators say the father was driving and he failed to yield at the crossing when his truck was hit by an oncoming train. The entire family of 4 was pronounced dead at the scene. Friendly reminder, registration for Idaho Gives wraps up tonight. Idaho Gives provides resources for nonprofits to promote their mission. Interested organizations can find a link to register in this story on ktvb.com. And that's your 411 on the 208. I'm Morgan Romero.
There's nothing else like it in the City of Trees, and for nearly a century, it's been the beacon of Boise, especially for those traveling by train. Today, the historic depot turns 99, so we're celebrating the only way we know how, by looking into how it got there. You have any history you want us to dig into, or any other comments on today's show? Text them to us. The number is on your screen, 208-321-5614. Always include your name and the hashtag the 208. That way, we know it's for us. And if you keep it clean, concise, and clever, well, that way we can share it with the rest of the class. What if I told you the same architects who designed the famed New York Public Library and the original congressional office buildings on Capitol Hill also have their name on one of Boise's famous landmarks, which also happens to sit on a sort of hill? It was dubbed the most beautiful structure of its kind in the West when it was built nearly a century ago. High praise for a structure that still overlooks the heart of the city of trees. And today, Boise celebrates the 99th birthday of the Depot.
When you think of Boise, you think of a couple of different iconic structures that we have here. One is the Gene Harris Band Shell located in Julia Davis Park, and the other is the Depot.
Yeah, the Boise Depot is an iconic symbol of Boise.
Iconic for sure. Obvious might be the way most see it. Just Google Boise and click the Images tab.
The view that we have from the top of the Depot is probably the most picturesque view in the entire city, and arguably is probably the most picture-taken location in the entire city.
While trains have been rolling through Boise since the late 1880s, they haven't always had a 96-foot tower as a target.
We technically had like 3 depot locations. The very first was a wood-framed building that was up here on the bench, not quite in the same location, but close. And then we had a downtown depot that was made of sandstone. And then this one was built in 1925.
Brandy Burns, who has a handle on the history of Boise,
April 16th, 1925, they held the opening day dedication.
says the city held parades with live bands and costume parties to celebrate the opening.
By having this mainline train service here, it really helped connect Boise to Salt Lake and Seattle and Portland and all of these other main urban centers in the West.
They don't make them like this anymore.
The Spanish-style architecture is what sets the Boise Depot apart from the rest of the city. A distinction Thad Webster,
Tour guide, City Parks and Rec, Boise Depot.
has had the privilege of describing for the last 4 years.
Obviously, the main part of the whole building is the passenger terminal.
Guiding guests through the nearly 100-year history of the depot.
Incoming traffic would enter from the street, turn up this aisle, go to the ticket office, and then they'd head down to get a newspaper or cigar of their choice.
While there may have been much needed upgrades to the building, much has remained.
There are antique railroad cars painted across each of the timbers.
Unchanged.
All of that's original, 1925. Timbers, chandeliers, and the air conditioning system, ceiling fans.
The ceiling is one of those that needed a touch-up, which they did during an early 1990s renovation.
When they looked up, they didn't see any painted ceiling. They saw black, total black, and that was from the coal-based furnace in the basement for the last 85 years. So they just went up there to dust it. And it was then that they figured out, oh no, we need to restore it because it's actually painted.
They also added an elevator to the tower.
Originally, that tower had stairs in it so that the clock worker could get up to work on the clock.
The clock, by the way, still operates with the original mechanism and chimes 3 times a day. The building hasn't been the only thing that's changed over the years. After the depot was completed in 1925, the city of Boise decided to redo the route to it, starting with changing the street name from 7th to Capitol Boulevard.
They had a grand vision of how Capitol Boulevard would be the entrance to the city of Boise. They really envisioned this clear view shed from the depot to the Capitol, which you can still see some of that today.
It's been more than 2 decades since the last passenger train passed through the Boise Depot, but that hasn't changed how it still stands as the stoic staple of the City of Trees.
It's historical, it adds a lot of character to the city of Boise, and it really is a destination place that when you come to Boise, you want to visit the depot.
It's pretty cool. So passenger rail service hasn't been in Boise since 1997 when Amtrak shut down the Pioneer route because of the cost to keep it going. But since then, there's been a big push to kind of bring it back. Some pushes were stronger than others, but most recently, like back in the summer of 2022, Boise's mayor met with Amtrak officials to talk about the possibility of hearing all aboard once again at the Boise Depot. For people that wanted to choose a different way to get to Salt Lake City, for example. Mayors from several cities scattered across southern Idaho signed on. Even Governor Brad Little got on board with this idea. And the idea was getting so much steam, there was a summit held at the depot a year later, the Greater Northwest Passenger Rail Summit. Mayors and Amtrak officials got together in Boise, July of 2023, to figure out if some of the $66 billion included in President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure bill to improve and expand passenger train systems, well, if that could include Boise.
Congress has directed the Federal Railroad Administration to work with us and others to see about restoring routes that were lost over time.
Okay, so step one would be figuring out if this would be feasible. But that study wouldn't be done for free. Okay, so what if the feds could cover the cost? All Boise would have to do is apply for a $500,000 grant. But when it came time to release the list of cities getting that grant last December, Boise was left standing at the station. Why? Because according to Boise Dev, Boise wasn't turned down necessarily. The Idaho Transportation Department just failed to submit the application. I mean, they did submit it, they just sent it to the wrong link apparently. So a simple mistake means Boise will have to wait a few more years to even be considered for a passenger corridor. Federal Railroad Administration says they could reopen applications next year.
So welcome along today as we talk about the drought monitor. And if you noticed on the date on this, I go back not quite, but almost a year back to 2023. And this was the areas of the country that were the driest. That is the western portion of the country. As you look here around Oklahoma, which was the extreme, exceptionally extreme, moving down into Texas. You notice Idaho. If you see these spots through here, that doesn't have anything on it, no color, that means that it's average. And about the end of spring of last year, we were doing pretty well. We got rain almost like we've had so far this year, which really worked out. Now, as we continue with this and we move toward the June, let's get into the fall. Here's September of last year. Now, all of a sudden, it starts to dry up. It's after the summer. We're using up the water in the reservoirs, and all of this down in the south, around New Mexico and Texas, pretty bad, also into western Montana, but still not so much here for Boise, but in western Oregon, where we're worried about it, as well as down in California. California was looking pretty good at that time, even toward the end of last year. Now, as we continue through the winter months, the snow that we received, as well as the rain, you can see that there's some severe to moderate sections of western Montana, even a very slim section here in the just east of the Willamette Valley of Oregon. But the southwest, as well as Boise, looking pretty good. The only spots is down in El Paso, down along the New Mexico border, down into Texas, that still has some exceptional or extreme situations there as far as this drought is concerned. But you know, all these locations had quite a bit of rain that came into the area because our lows came down into California, moved up over the northwest, and also brought in the rain. So we saw all that rain this last year, you know, especially the last couple of months. Maybe it wasn't real acceptable to us, but it did do some good for us. Here's what we're seeing throughout the day today as well. Some of those high clouds, temperature reached 57 degrees for the high. Same thing for Twin Falls. You know, it's another day of wind. They're starting to die down just a little bit for this evening. But if you look at some of the wind gusts we had earlier, 26 miles an hour for Boise, 28 for Twin Falls, mid-20s for most of the mountain locations. So here's what's happening. As you take a look at this, we've had the storm system that's pushing out, and still some of this cooler air from the north that's going to be around, pulling in from the north, winds coming from the north. And because of that, we're going to see those temperatures likely in the mid-50s again for tomorrow. After that, this storm system tries to pull in. That's going to be toward the weekend, but as it does at weekends, but it brings up that southwesterly flow, and what we're looking at then are warmer temperatures. So for tomorrow, more of the same, just like what we had today. 50s throughout the Magic Valley, lower 40s, gets even in the central mountains, western mountains, lower 40s to upper 30s. Down here in the valley, doing well to see highs around 55, 56 degrees, which is the high temperature tomorrow for Boise. So let me show you the 7-day forecast. Still one more breezy day, and then after that into Thursday, it starts to die down and the temperatures start to warm up. And you can see into Saturday and Sunday, happy to show you this. Saturday and Sunday, partly cloudy to mostly sunny, temperatures around 70 degrees, could be even a little bit warmer next week.
right, several comments today about whether or not a potato should lose its priority spot as the best vegetable or the favorite vegetable for Americans. And whether or not it's a vegetable at all, should be moved to the grain category. This one from Fred said, I hate to have to take a biology class, I assume, today. Don't grains grow above ground? Yeah, they do, but lots of vegetables grow above ground as well. It doesn't make them a grain. Issue was the starchy part of this vegetable might be too much to be considered a vegetable. Like it's more harmful than it is helpful and doesn't quite fit into the vegetable category. It's starchy like a grain, like a bread, like a pasta. And if you didn't want that biology class, well, Robin might give it to you. Botanically, a vegetable is the non-reproductive part of a plant. A grain is a small, hard, dry fruit, reproductive part of the plant. So there's your biology, botanical lesson when it comes to plants. That's the difference, I guess. I'm comfortable if a potato wants to identify as a grain, says Rob in Boise. Glad you caught that one, Rob. Finally today, a mistake made by an office. Now taxpayers miss out on this opportunity for travel. Disappointing, says Brandon from Nampa. There's still another shot possibly, maybe next year. We'll see. We'll see you tomorrow.